Okay, so let me deliver my critique of Eyes Wide Shut again. I've always thought it's overrated, and obviously, in part, you could say Kubrick's true version was covered up or never released, and there's like conspiracy theories with that. But I mean, if it was any question, why would he even have been allowed to make the movie in the first place or still release it? Like people would say, oh, that's why he was killed, or it was like some conspiracy. But regardless, it's like it's not really that good. I feel like some people glorify it too much because it was his last film, and in fact, his whole filmography in general is a bit overrated because people always try to read into it like all these cryptic little theories and different things. It's like that seems nice, but you don't do that with anybody else, right? They try to read into deeper meanings that you give credit to things that otherwise would just be ordinary. So I think it's a little bit special treatment that he gets or some weird. And then if you criticize one of his movies, they'll say, "Oh, you just don't get it" or something like that. But here's the main two problems with Eyes Wide Shut is that number one is there's this trope in it, which I'm sure people would explain and say, oh, there's some meaning to it, or oh, it's to show it's a dream, or I don't know what explanation. People always try to defend everything about his movies, but it would be where Tom Cruise's character, obviously the doctor. Well, there's one funny trope, first of all. This is more just an observation, where he always shows off that I'm a doctor to everybody, right? Like almost as often as Ben Shapiro brings up his wife being a doctor, like the match made in heaven. But no, he shows off he's a doctor like it's a police badge or like it's a I don't know. He just does that to everybody, and he's always flexing his money. Like he flexes it to the cab driver, he flexes it to other people. He's just always using money to get his way, and like almost bribing people. Like, oh, I'll give you extra if you let me in to buy a costume, or he keeps trying to offer people money throughout the whole movie to give him special treatment because okay he's a doctor and he's made a good amount of money, no doubt. So he has a bit of an ego thing with showing off his money or using his money to get his way, right? That's a recurring trope that happens several times throughout the movie. And then the other one is that he repeats back, or no, wait, never mind. No, it's the fact that he just brings up the fact that he's a doctor to like everybody, to the costume guy. He says like, oh, I'm a doctor. It's like, why does he care? But he has this need to somehow show that off. He says it to them. The costume guy, he says it to the guy at the hotel. He says it to somebody else. Maybe the cab driver. Like he just says it to everybody, and it's like, who cares if you're a doctor? Like he's acting like it's some official status, or he's like a cop or something. It gives him some special authority. So, but no, here are my. Those are just like little funny tropes and observations that you make a compilation. Like how many times in the movie does he try to offer somebody extra money, right, or some exorbitant sum of money to do something for him, right? Whether it be the costume or whether it be the taxi driver to wait and stuff like that. And then how many times does he mention he's a doctor just unnecessarily? That has no context to the situation. Like it's one thing to if it's relevant, but it really wasn't. Like he goes to the hotel and he says I'm a doctor, and it's like okay, so what does that have to do with anything? But no, the two criticisms are a lot of the dialogue is kind of stale and repetitive, almost to the point where it'll just be Tom Cruise repeating back what is said to him. Almost every line that's said to him, it feels like is just he just repeats it back. Right? They'll say something. Oh, we're gonna go over the rainbow, and then he says over the rainbow, like at the party here. You can look up like there's probably 100 lines in the movie like that where they'll say something to him and then he'll just repeat it back. Like it's just kind of dull, and however you want to try to explain it, it's just not really very effective screenwriting. So that's one major flaw that's pretty obvious. And then the other one is the fact that there's the whole build up around the cult and the party and all of this, right, where he gets the costume, he goes there, he gets scolded, he's scared for his life, stuff like that. And even if you want to say that the overall value of and meaning of the story is about the sexual repression and everything like that, that he has his infidelity and everything going on with his wife, like the fantasies, and that's the main conflict, sure. Even if you want to say that, too much screen time is dedicated to the issue of again the party and that his life might be in danger, and then he's looking for his friend and his friend might have disappeared, and he's being chased down the street by this one guy who's following him. It's like he drives up to the gate and gets handed a letter that tells him not to keep butting in. Like all those scenes have nothing to do, right? You could say, oh, it's just part of his fantasy to do with this, right? But to do with his sexual repression or again infidelity and everything that he's having here. But it sort of doesn't matter because all those moments of buildup don't have a payoff aside from the pool game with Ziegler, which doesn't give you really much of a payoff, right? Like I'm not saying it has to be positive or negative, but there has to be something more. Like, so they just ditch that, right? After, aside from the Ziegler conversation, which really doesn't resolve anything, nothing happens. He doesn't take down the cult. He doesn't expose something. He doesn't, get killed by them, or they give us some sort of payoff, or he somehow escapes them or makes a deal with them, right? Give us some other payoff for that. Otherwise, all those scenes are wasted, right? So it feels like all this suspense, like, oh, it's scary that he's being chased, followed down the street by this guy, or it's supposed to be suspenseful. You waste precious minutes of screen time on that, and then you ditch it at the end and say, oh, well, it's not really about that, and oh, it's just an analogy for his obsessions and paranoia and everything like this. That doesn't work because you're committing. So then what's the value of him being followed down the street? Nothing. What's the value of him getting that letter from the guy at the gate? Nothing. What's the value of him looking for his friend at the hotel? Not like, none of those things have any payoff or reason to be there. So it like plays as, again, on the sexual level of what it's trying to express with the wife and the husband. Yes, that part can work, but all the other stuff is there, like building up suspense or some real sense of threat or dread and mystery, and then it doesn't have any payoff, right? Give us something more than, again, just the Ziegler scene, which is kind of underwhelming. It's kind of similar to a criticism I said of American Psycho, where it's the same thing, where you have the detective, obviously, you have, Willem Dafoe, you have all this sort of kind of clues or different, ways that he's killing people, and all these kind of pieces of evidence and things that we see where they could come back to him trying to cover things up, him being careful, and none of that matters at the end, because it's like, either he just gets away with it, or oh, it was just a dream, or something in between. And it's like, again, that Willem Dafoe character never appears again at the end. So you've built him up in a couple scenes, and then he just doesn't give us some payoff. Okay, he could arrest him and he could be the one to catch him, or he could just give some indication that he got away with it, or he's been paid off, or whatever. So the important distinction isn't that, oh, it should be a nice bow tie ribbon sort of perfect ending. It's more just that you have build up that doesn't have any payoff. Not whether it's positive or negative, there's just no payoff. Right, so you're wasting precious minutes of screen time. All those Willem Dafoe meetings have no meaning then. It just ends. He's not even there in the final scene. He's not even, no payoff. Any sort of clues or evidence, none of it matters, right? It's just all thrown out. So, oh, it's all a dream, or oh, it's all being covered up for him, or oh, he just gets away with it. But any of that is sort of just underwhelming, because you had a real, if everything was real that he was doing, it had much more dramatic weight and depth. And then, okay, he's actually going to get caught, or he's actually going to get away with it, right? It would be much more rewarding and a payoff for some of that buildup, because, in other words, none of that matters, right? You can just take those Willem Dafoe scenes out because there's no impact one way or the other. You can take out every scene except for the ones that are sort of satirical to do with the whole, social dynamics that he has, but none of those scenes have weight. Right? So again, Eyes Wide Shut, the issue being the party sort of cult-like environment, none of those scenes matter because he's not really under any real danger, and nothing really happens to him, and there's no real payoff with that. He doesn't take the cult down, they don't take him down, there's nothing really to pay off with that, so those scenes are just wasted. And the same thing is true with again, American Psycho. He's not going to get caught, there's no even attempt to catch him. It's just random. It just ends. It could be all a dream. Like, those are both very wasted halves of the movies, right? That they could have been great, but they're kind of just decent to good because the endings are both kind of garbage and they waste kind of half of the movie, right? Where, again, half of Eyes Wide Shut is about the cult and the party and the suspense of that. The other half is about the sexual repression and all of that. So it succeeds on only the second level. And then the same thing with American Psycho, where half of it's about the clues and the detective and the killings. The other half is about the satire and the dark humor and everything like that. So again, that succeeds on the second level as well.